All right, cool. So things that we've gone over, right? So you can break them up in basically 3 sections, right? There's algebra, finance, and modeling. The biggest thing in algebra was the whole that you would be given a situation involving linear, and then there would be follow-up questions. All right, the thing is that there were 3 ways to go about this. You had an easy, which was no calculating. You had a medium, which was some calculating. And then you had, I would also still call it a medium, but it had to do with cost, revenue, profit. Okay. In terms of, well, actually, you know what? Let me also omit right here too, saying no graphing. For finance, we had compound continuously, compound, we just call it compounded, but you can just say or think of regular, right? And then we also had effective interest rate. You also had annuities. And among all of those, right, you have to be able to solve for any variable. And the unique thing in their annuities, specific to annuities, is the whole amortization schedule, right? But you know for sure that there is no simple interest. And you also know that there's no purchasing analysis. For modeling, there's 2 flavors, right? You have 2 kinds, if you haven't noticed already. Right, and it's basically algebra heavy. I mean, they're both, sorry, let me rephrase that. They're both involving algebra, but it's either, let me be more specific, income linear base, or income summation base. Right, and then of course, for practice, if you look at some of the harder problems I have there might be like a combo of those, but on the final, there won't be. All right, so those are our topics that we did, believe it or not, over the entire semester, right? We did the algebra very fast, very quick, very swift, right? I cranked those out as quickly as I could. And then what happened was when we went to the finance section, that took a little bit longer because We had to talk about compound period, what no compound period, what does it mean to solve for the other variables, the algebra that needs to be involved so that you understand each equation and what it looks like, right? Because if you look at your formula sheet, right? Let me just pull it up really quick. Where's box? There. Right, if you look at the formula sheet here that I have, this is an extended formula sheet because I took the time to put the simple interest equation here. This one you can find in my textbook. But you can see that technically, you only need to know the far left column. That has pretty much all the formulas you need, with the exception of the effective interest rate and the present value. But all the other equations, even though it feels like you're memorizing, they're just algebraic derivations of the original, right? You change it algebraically so that you can get it. That also means that, for example, that all you need, for example, is the base formula. So if you have, for example, a question like this, how long would it take your money to double at 3% compound continuously, right? If you go the strategy way of how I've been normally teaching it, that's great. But the moment that you realize it's compound continuously, you know that you're working with this formula. And since you know that your money is doubling, you know that you can do something as simple as replacing the principal with 1. Twice of 1 is 2. And then e to the, what is that, 3%? Just 0.03. And the only formula, the only variable you're looking for is this t. So t is what you're looking for, right? But we don't teach it this way because it's too demanding, especially for non-math students, right? To say, okay, go from here, remember your algebra so that you can get it to look like this, right? These are equivalent statements. It's just that it's easier when everyone's looking at the formula sheet that here everyone should be realizing. And I know that between you and Tina, and I don't know who the third person is that came in, that these equations are set up where the variable on the left side is the unknown, what you're looking for, and then the stuff on the right side is all the stuff that is known, what you're not looking for. So you don't want to run into the mistake where I always go, well, what number was given and what do you not know? And then all of a sudden you accidentally plug in the number that's labeled correctly, but into the wrong variable. So, that's things like that, right? But yeah, these are our topics from the year, or the semester, I should say. And if that incited any questions, if you will, let me flip back and see if anyone wrote me a question. No. Yeah, if that incited any questions of some sort, just let me know. But otherwise,
you go over
yeah.
modeling?
Oh, which kind?
You could start with the first topic, but I'm pretty confused with both.
Well, if you go to, let's see, if you go back to the notes and let's try to redo one of the problems, because I'm pretty sure you don't remember that, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. So we'll just redo one. If you go back, I'm gonna copy and paste. Let's see. No, not that one. Let's say, oh, here we go. Okay, so that was the fourth one. So say we redo one of these questions right here. I'm just going to copy and paste it. So what everyone should be able to do okay, so I'll type this out right here on the next page and I'll write note. This is an example already done from, what date was that? April 14th. Okay, so then I understand that it's confusing, which is fine. Well, what's happened is that this, hopefully people realize, are the components. And these components make up your model, right? Your model is made up of components. And then you're supposed to ask questions. Answer questions about that. Now the questions, of course, are already on the other lecture or whatnot. But then, for example, since instead of exam number 2 or even exam number 1, where I gave you one question at a time, you have 3 pieces of information about here. What is it that needs to be assisted or understood when you read these 3 things, these 3 components or pieces, if you will? For anyone, for that matter, not just because Tina, it's her question. Right? Because the modeling concept is just basically telling you, hey, what makes you money minus the things that cost you money.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
For modeling problems, so it's either future value or present value, right?
When it's an annuity, yeah.
Okay. So
right.
each bullet points are either present or future.
If it's an annuity.
Okay.
See, that's the key thing. So the question was, hey, is each one of these a future or a present value annuity? And the answer is yes, it is, if it's an annuity, right? So I'm going to, if you look on my sheet right now, I'm going to skip to the 3rd page just so I can leave the 2nd page here for this problem. But here, the first question was, okay, so I'm going to say student question 1. The components or pieces are either future or present value. Okay, and my answer to that is that only if the question is an annuity, right? Because what happens from that is, what if you have a question that has the word compound continuously in that, right? That is not an annuity. And it's not really, sure, the equation has an F in it and a P. F stands for future value of the account. P stands for principal, but not present. You can think of it as present, but it's not the same, right? Or if a question asked for, compare the effective interest rate, right? You have to know that that's not annuity, and sure, it's talking about the future, but there's no present sense in that. And then, of course, the good old standard, right, is that if they give you compound something, and then they tell you that it's a single deposit, that's not a future or present or thing. Yeah, they have future concepts in them, and they have P's in the equation, but that's technically principal for a single deposit. So these are examples of not annuities. So the difference is that unlike the second and first exam where you had to read each problem and figure it out, and once you solve it, that's your answer, you're doing the same thing. It's just that the difference here is that you have to figure out each problem within a bullet. And instead of saying, hey, I'm done, you're not done, because you got to take each answer from each bullet and then put it together in a model sense. Right? What other questions do we have about constructing this model, right? Sometimes students say or ask, oh, I don't know how I can tell if it's one thing or another. Well, all the expenses, that comes from the financing aspect. From all the revenue generating, it can be something simple as this first sentence here, revenue generated by 5 times the number of employees, right? That's relying on prior knowledge. That is not something that I personally taught in this class, because I would like to think that everyone could realize that that's 5 times a variable where the variable represents employees. What has been taught are things such as cost, revenue, profit, that you should be able to recognize the phrasing of a cost, revenue, profit problem. Or the more relatively new thing that when you recognize the verbiage or context of a summation problem. So sure, I understand that modeling may feel tough, challenging at times. I'm already telling you though that it's completely comprised 95% of the things you've already learned. Now it's just a matter of pulling it all together and make sure that your thought of flow or your flow of thoughts are still just as strong as before, but now all you have to do is just elevate it just a touch so that you can see how it all combines to one another if they're related.
Can we brush up on cost, revenue, and profit, like the formulas?
Sure.
And when
Let's
do I apply
pull.
it also?
Well, can anyone answer that right now?
When you have
Well, first,
2 points.
oh, sorry, let me rephrase that. Thank you for answering, whoever that was. I couldn't recognize your voice. But second was, did I need to let this sit on your screens right now and you guys try this right now, or no?
No.
That's only one no. There's a handful of you in here. Who's here? Brindley, Tina, Julia, Lim, and Natalie. Okay, so I'll leave this open space here when you look at this PDF, just in case if you want to practice it. So for cost, revenue, profit, I'm just going to grab a problem from the textbook. So whoever that was, thank you for answering, right? The first question was, student question, brush up on cost, revenue, profit. And the answer is how to recognize it, right? Was that you recognize problem because it provides 2 points or 2 sets of points, right? That's perfect. So whoever said that, thank you very much. The last piece about it is and. Italicize and the phrase each whatever you're talking about, each blank can be sold for blank, right? It's normally some dollar amount here. And that's how you know, okay? The example we're going to do is on page, this is from the old textbook. So let me just write the page number here for you all. Where is it? Okay, example from old textbook. Page. Nope, that's not it. That's not it either. Ah, here we go. So this is on page 36, page 36. I'll put this right here, old textbook. Number 6. So they told you that the cost of producing 1,250 units costs $45,000. And that the cost of producing 1,500 units is $50,000. Now here's the thing, right? You all need to be able to define the points like this. It's not going to be written out like this, as if you've seen before, whether it's a cost revenue profit problem or even the cost revenue profit portions in the context of a model, right? So they gave you these 2 points and they told you that each unit produced can be sold for, what is that, $30. Okay. So what do we do first?
Find the slope.
Yep. So then your setup should look like this. I'll color code it as well. 1250 minus 1,500. And then once someone gets that, let me know what that is, please.
$5,000 over 250.
5,000 over 250.
You have to simplify it.
That's fine. I can do that. That's 20. Right. And then my question to people is, no, I don't want to use purple. I got to use a different color here. This is green. Okay. So you definitely want to make sure you know how to convert this to the slope-intercept form. And again, that's any way you prefer. You can use either y minus 1. This is what I taught predominantly in class. Or if you're old school like me, you go straight for the formula and you use the points to solve for the y-intercept, right? Again, I normally go this way. And then I always pull the lowest or smallest point, right? This goes here. Then this goes there. All right. Y minus equals 20x, and then 45,000 minus 1250. Okay, your cost function is going to be 20x. So that's 20 times negative 1250 plus 45,000. So it should be plus 20,000. Okay, so that takes care of the cost portion. What about the revenue portion? Make sure I didn't make any typos. So it's 20 times negative 1250 plus 45,000. Yeah, that's good. So we're looking for the revenue function next, and then in turn that will allow us to find the profit function.
Is it just 30x?
Yep, so that's great, thank you. You have to realize that you have taken the time, well, let's use a different color, to exhaust this number, these numbers, and the only thing you haven't done was this. It must mean something. Therefore, if you recall from when we were doing it, right, this becomes, I'll use the same color. This navy becomes just r of x equals 30x, right? So what happens is that whatever the number is, it becomes your slope. You put it right in front of the x, and there is no y-intercept there. That's why if you look way back in the notes the first time I taught about this, and then I said, oh, do you want to know the rules or the tips as to how to recognize cost, revenue, and profit? I wrote out all those details for you. So that's on, let me see which lecture that was so I can reference it. I bet you it was February 4th. No, it wasn't. It was the one before. So January 30th lecture. Yeah. So you see right here where I talk about cost, revenue, and profit, and I label what they are, and I give you the hints on all of them, right? Let me just write down January 30th. Here, I'll say note. No, I'll write it. Note, January 30th, lecture for hints. So amongst you, if I ask, oh, I'm sorry, I just asked right now, and I go, yeah, so how do you get the revenue function? And then whoever it was that answered, again, thank you. She said, oh, it's just 30x, and you wondered how she got it so quickly, right? It's this right here. This is what you wanted to look after, right? Whether it's a combination of her remembering it really well and maintaining that information, or she has those hints written down somewhere on your study sheet, your cheat sheet that you're going to use for the final. That's what you want to worry about, okay? Now, for the profit function, I'm already going to tell you what it is. It's just the difference between these two. But what's the number one mistake students make when they are finding the profit function? Right? I'm going to write it out for you painstakingly. Right? What's the mistake people make here? Every time, without a doubt. not every one, but every time there will always be one student at least that makes this mistake.
Forgetting to distribute
Distribute what specifically?
the negative.
Yep. So you all know that this is visually understandable, right? You know that 30x is going to subtract the 20x. So obviously you're going to get 10x. But they forget to take this negative and distribute here. And then all their answers become incorrect. Right? Now here's the thing, right? If you go back to some of the modeling problems, what you'll notice is that if they tell you, hey, you make so many things for this much, so many things for this much, and each whatever produced can be sold for that, this is the same exact work, right? This would be an example of one component of the model, right? Or the one bullet, whatever you want to think of it, right? Specific to cost, revenue, profit though, right? The follow-up questions always answer involving these three equations. So, right, I'm going to do them in purple. So actually not in pink. So it's obvious to tell them apart, right? You have to remember that the 20 only, this is what's called the variable costs per unit. We also called it the marginal cost. You must also remember that the 20,000 is the fixed costs, right? So these answers, when they ask you, hey, what's the variable cost per unit and what's the fixed cost, you have to realize that it involves the cost function, and you drop any variables, throw in dollar signs, and realize this is a dollar amount. The additional thing with the cost function that's special or unique is, let me use a different color. Let's use this light purple. Actually, no, I want to use this weird green. What's unique with the cost function, no, not green. I'll use this orange. Red? Yeah, not this other red. What's unique about the cost function that it also leads to what's called the average cost per unit. And the way you get that, remember, is that I would label it AVG of X, right? Average of the X's. And it's just your cost function over X. If you need a further substitution, just to make sure that it stays with you, it's the same exact formula in green, which is 20x plus 20,000. And now you're dividing by X, whatever the number is, right? So this problem, you have to be given a number, right? Number must be provided to solve. Number must be given. Not even to solve, to calculate, given, to calculate. All right. What about break even? Break even is specific to, I'll use pink again, to the profit function, right? Profit function allows for break even. Break even, again, means to set $0, set $0 equal to profit function, or set $0 equal to 10x minus 20,000. And then you have to, 1, solve for x, and 2, round up to nearest whole number if necessary. Right, because this one's obviously going to be a flat, even number, right? You take 20K, you divide it by 10, it's going to come to 2,000. Sometimes, most times when we're working on this together, you'll find out that, oh, right, it didn't come out to a precisely even number, so therefore I have to round up, right? Because you can never make partial of any kind of product, whatever it might be. So there's that. And the other piece, so we normally find cost, revenue, profit, that's part one. They ask you the variable cost per unit, and fixed cost, that's part two. Part three, they normally ask you to calculate. They give you an X value and you have to be able to calculate. I'm not gonna do that because that is just saying, hey, X equals 1, and you plug in 1 for every X for each of the 3 equations and you solve for it. I'm sorry, you calculate for it. Okay, so that everyone has under their belt. The other things though after that is the break even, which I've labeled out here. So I may have went out of order, but I hit all 5 pieces of the cost revenue profit classic problem. And the average cost per unit, which is still piggybacking off the cost function, except it has those minor details that you have to worry. So you have to be able to know that, oh, right. This is a different function that's just altered very slightly because it's looking for an average, a mean of things. And then that's the equation. However, if you want to actually calculate, a number must be given as well, okay? What other questions on rehashing cost, revenue, profit? Okay, if none, what other questions on rehashing? Oh, well, anything else for that matter. Any other questions? So I know a couple of you came in after 11, which is fine, but this is exactly how the lectures moving forward are going, right? I don't have a full-fledged like, hey, I'm gonna sit here and do a whole bunch of problems for you, because not everyone needs that, right? I'll be wasting people's time, especially on Tuesday, if say you're someone that really knows modeling really well, right? Then you'll start or you'll attend the class from the beginning of class, and then you're like, okay, cool. And then you drop out the last hour because you're like, oh, I already know this. Or the worst scenario is that you know all the beginning stuff already, and then you have to sit there and watch me do all the stuff from the beginning, and then it's not until the end of the lecture that you go, okay, this is the stuff that's relevant for me. So what do, right? At the very beginning, right, I was about to, close shop, or I'm not even close shop, but before anybody was leaving, right, I asked like, well, what kind of questions do you have specifically? And then we started off with saying like, well, this is the stuff we learned, right? Nothing that we haven't done already. And then we talk about modeling, and I just talked about it briefly here, and then right here for cost, revenue, profit, which was the next page, right? Then we actually went into the problem a little bit because that was something specific that they wanted to see. But you'll see that I'll pull a lot of examples from things we've done prior, because I'm sure that if everyone went back to their notes and tried to redo a problem, no one has memorized one, right? Or it may look familiar, but you won't know it to the degree of, say, 90% of the problem, right? To you, you'll look at the problem, it'll feel like a new problem, or you've seen it and there's some familiarity, but you won't know the answer right off the bat. Or maybe you would, I don't know. So to circumvent creating new problems just for the sake of new problems, right? I'm gonna redirect you to the problems that we've done before, and then making sure that that's understood before we actually need to see another example. And remember, my textbook, my actual textbook, the one with a nice font and layout, has example modeling problems that will encompass review of the entire class. So what will happen, and again, I'll repeat this on Tuesday, is that you definitely want to, and I'll send an email out to you actually, maybe doing via remind as well, that you want to come with questions ready, right? Because at this point, there's nothing more for me to quote unquote formally teach. Go over problems, yeah. If you have a question, you ask me the question and I'm happy to do it. But if you come in blank with anything, it's just pretty much I leave the Zoom conference room open, right? Long enough so that people are cycling in so that I don't miss anybody. And then after that, if there aren't any questions, that's fine. I'll still keep it open. Maybe people are flipping through their notebooks or they're looking for a specific question. But the moment the room completely empties out, I'm going to wait another 15 minutes just to make sure that no one's going to come in again. Actually, at this point, an hour in, I don't think anyone else is going to come. And then after that, that'll be it for the class. I'll still post all the details, of course, like the video from Tuesday's lecture I'm processing right now because it was a little bit larger. Someone stayed for office hours after the class. And what other things happened was if the PDF we wrote anything down that was germane to the entire class or relevant to the entire class, that'll be posted as usual as well, right? But I'll type it out in an email. I have everyone that's here ready for Thursday, so that's nice. Specific to those so that people come with questions ready, right? Because it's more for you guys than anything. So there's that. What other questions do people have in general? Or something that they may want to see? Let me flip back and make sure there weren't any questions. All right, cool. So no type questions.
Could you do a submission question?
Yep.
And thank you before. It really cleared up a lot.
No, that's fine. For the summation, now here's my follow-up question to it. What about it? Is it the actual calculating part by hand? So you're like, oh, I'm having trouble obtaining the numbers? Or is it more like you have a phrase and you don't know how to decipher it?
The phrase.
Okay, because remember, I think you caught a little bit of it when you jumped in. Remember, the summation is only one component, or AKA one bullet of a modeling problem. So if everyone would flip to, if you have another tab open, right? If you go to my textbook, I'm going to share the screen right now very briefly, but we're gonna have a discussion around it, right? I'm going to my textbook, it's the appendix section, and it's page, not 43, but actually, yeah, let's start with 43, that's good. So I'm gonna give you a little bit of a head start if you're gonna do this. So right here, number 2, right? By the way, as you can see, number 1, you can see I wrote out the question, the components. Leading question, remember, translates to basically make the model. That's all that means. It's just telling you to ask for the model. And you can see parts 1, 2, and 3, those little I's, remember that's Roman numeral, just in lowercase, the follow-up questions. And then you can see the answers follow the same numbering. So just to give you some insight right there. I don't want you to look at that right now. I want you to look at just number 2 right here. I have it up on the board. Or I'm sorry, the board. I have it up on screen right here. And if you have it on your own tab, because you're looking at multiple tabs on a book or whatever the case, it's going to be, again, my textbook, page 43 at the bottom. Number 2, I'll read it out loud. It says, a startup wants to keep track of their marketing techniques. And I go, cool. First bullet, part A, the company plans on using social media to spread their presence online. An advertising company will assist and agree to pay 80 cents for each digital share. Suppose on the first day of a month, assuming 30 days in a month, the advertising is shared to 7 people initially. Each person shares to 4 new people the next day, and so on. So again, this won't be every summation that you'll ever face in the world. Heck, it may be even possible that people won't see summations after this, but at least you'll understand what they are. So my question is, wait, what? Sorry, hold on. I realize that I'm looking at a typo right now. Give me 1 second. I was looking at the question. I was just reading out loud and thinking about the last thing I was going to say, but payroll 1/10 of 0.1. How did I get 18 over 67? Ah, that's why. I put a slash instead of a decimal. Ooh, I'm glad I caught that. Okay, there we go. Good. All right. So as far as anyone running into the summation component or summation piece in any model that they run into, right? Hopefully you realize that there are only 3 numbers when you reread this question, right? Advertising company assists agree to pay 80 cents per digital share. Suppose on the first day of the month, there's 30 days in a month. Again, that's just anecdotal. The assuming 30 days in a month, that's just to, help you understand. Advertising is shared to 7 people, and then the shares go to 4 new people the next day, and so on and so forth. What are the 3 numbers here?
30, 0.80, and 7.
Ignore the 30. The 30 is just to help you visualize the problem, where it's kind of like saying assume 7 days in a week, assume 30 days in a month, assume 365 days in a year.
Oh, got it.
Does
so
that make sense?
4?
Yeah.
Is that the next question?
Yeah, so ignore 30. So 0.8 is correct. 7 is correct. What's the last number?
4.
4, right? So let me write those down really quick. Where is it? So we're looking at this, and then, so this is number 2. No, I'll write it like this. My textbook, page 43-ish, number 2. The reason, again, I say ish is that as I alter my textbook, the numbers will shift a little bit. So part A tells you that you have the numbers 80 cents, or like that, right? And then you have 4, and then you have 7. 4 and 7. Oops. The temple. Ah, here we go. Page 43. There we go. 4 and 7? Yeah, 4 and 7. Okay. So there's that. Now, before you even jump into an equation, right, you have to realize that there is some kind of monetary value. There's some kind of initial, and there's some kind of growth. What are those numbers, right? It's kind of like a matching game. Which of these 3 numbers on the left line up with one of these 3 on the right?
Monetary is 0.80. Initial
Cool.
is 7.
Okay.
And the growth is 4.
Okay. Everyone else agree with that, I hope? She's right, right? Now, you take this piece of information and you recall that since this is going to be a summation, you learn from sigma notation that it is, let me write in green. Sigma of I equals 1 to the n, right? That's just your mechanism, or it's more like a guide of how to instruct your summation, right? You're adding up. It's just done in sigma notation, and you have to punch these in. Punch it in how? That nice little thing that I taught you. Alpha, beta to the I minus 1, right? And the reason I used alpha and beta again was I just got bored with other regular Latin letters, so I use Greek letters, but you can use it the same way. Alpha, just remember alpha is like A is for initial, A is for beginning of the alphabet, which means that if you have an initial number, you have a growth number. So then you further take this along.
It's alpha plus beta, right? Not times.
No, it is times.
Oh, it is times.
Yeah, it is times. 7 times 4 to the I minus 1. And of course, you're not going to forget that you make 80 cents per view, right? So every summation for this class and specific to the model, because that's the only time you've seen them, can and will break down like this. It's just a matter of distinguishing the problem. I'm sorry, the pieces. And it will always be the same way. I will always, always, always say something of the vernacular of, hey, you did research, you're a Instagram influencer, you're a web page designer, that you're starting up your own business. You are something that has to do where you monetize by viewership, likeness, activity, whatever you want to call it, that social media thing that captures people, you monetize from that, right? So in this nice imaginary way that I've created in such a way where it's growing in an exponential form and you're adding up or you're summing up or you're in sigma notation because it's an easy way to represent how your growth as well as your money is growing, right? It's always going to boil down to this format. That's one. And two, whatever your web design is or online platform, I will always frame it in some manner where I go, oh, research suggests, research has shown, you have found, you have done research and found, right? Some combination that your growth